don't think we'll see Harry and the King actually sit down in the coming months?
I think there's a chance we will, but I do think Charles is going to need to be slightly dragged into it. I think Charles got to a point after his diagnosis where I think he took a decision that he needed to protect his peace and that his younger son was causing him a significant amount of stress and anxiety in his life. And so he took a decision that he needed to focus on his health and getting back to the place that he needed to be, and that meant not exhaustingly spending all of his time kind of running around after Harry. And so Harry is going to have to show Charles that having a relationship is not going to be exhausting and draining for him.
After long years of silence, everything inside the royal family exploded into a storm of revelations. During Harry's highly anticipated homecoming, King Charles finally revealed a truth that had been buried for decades. He and Prince William confirmed what no one expected. The real identities of Archie and Lilibet were not what the world had always believed. The room went still, shock etched on every face. In that moment, decades of hidden secrets, forbidden relationships, and a story that began long before Harry even met Meghan were exposed. Nothing would ever be the same again. What really happened behind closed doors? Why had the truth been kept hidden for so long? Tonight, we uncover every shocking detail. On the night of Harry's return, the palace gates opened slowly, and he stepped out of the car with his family beside him. It had been years since he walked these grounds, hoping for warmth, and tonight he dared to hope again. Meghan held Lily's hand tightly, while Archie walked close to his father, eyes wide at the massive stone palace looming ahead. Harry took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. He wanted this to work. He wanted home to feel like home again. King Charles had personally invited them. Weeks earlier, a letter arrived, meticulously written in his father's careful, familiar handwriting. It spoke of family, healing, and the desire to have his grandchildren near. Harry had read it countless times, searching for hidden meanings, but all he saw was a father who seemed tired, yet genuine. Inside the palace glowed softly under warm lighting. Staff moved quietly through the halls, preparing the gathering room where the family would meet. This was no public event, no cameras, no press, no grand speeches, just family. That was what Charles promised. William and Kate arrived first. William's face was a mask of control, every expression measured. Kate offered Harry a polite smile, but it barely reached her eyes. Harry noticed, but said nothing. He had grown used to the distance that had always existed between them. Princess Anne entered next, steady and commanding as always. She nodded to Harry and spoke briefly to Meghan about the children. Camilla came last, moving with quiet grace to stand beside Charles. Her gaze lingered on Harry with an emotion he couldn't name: pity, sorrow, or perhaps both. Harry felt the heavy tension in the room, the strange way people glanced at one another without ever meeting his eyes. Charles stood at the center, hands clasped, his face lined with more than age. Something urgent, something wrong. Meghan felt it too. She reached for Harry's hand and he held it tightly, aware that something monumental was about to happen. Archie and Lilibet played near the window, oblivious to the storm brewing around them. Then Charles cleared his throat. The room fell into an uneasy silence. Even the children froze. Sensing the shift, he thanked everyone for coming, his voice calm but heavy with gravity. There was something he had carried far too long. Harry's heart raced. He scanned the room. William's face betrayed nothing. Anne stared at the floor. Camilla avoided his gaze completely. Charles spoke of his health, of what the doctors had warned about the time he had left. He refused to leave this world carrying secrets that should have been revealed. Meghan's grip tightened, and Harry felt the weight in his chest intensify. Charles admitted to his many failures as a father, his eyes finally locking with Harry's. Tonight, he vowed he would not make the mistake of silence. The air seemed to vanish. Harry tried to speak, but his voice failed him. Charles straightened, bracing himself as if to carry a crushing weight. He declared a truth that had to be spoken before time ran out. The words hung in the air like a blade waiting to fall. Harry felt the ground shift beneath him. He did not yet know what would be said, but he understood with terrifying certainty that nothing would ever be the same. What truth could be so dangerous that a king would risk everything to reveal it? Charles did not pause. He did not soften his words. He simply spoke, as if cutting open a wound that had festered for decades. Recent DNA tests had proven that Archie and Lilibet were not biologically Harry's. The results were undeniable. The room went deathly silent. Harry felt the blow hit him physically. His mouth opened, but no words came. Meghan went pale, her hands slipping from his grasp. Charles's voice continued, steady yet laden with sorrow. The children's DNA matched a man from Meghan's past, her first husband. Meghan gasped, flying a hand to her mouth. Tears welled immediately, but she could not speak. Harry searched her face for denial, for shock, for any hint that this was untrue, but all he saw was raw guilt. Charles pressed further. Meghan had never completely ended her relationship with her first husband. Even during the early stages of dating Harry, the connection had continued. Harry staggered as if struck, his mind racing to reconstruct conversations, moments, signs he had missed. William stood across the room, his face carved from stone. He had known. He had known for months and said nothing. Harry's voice cracked as he confronted his brother. William replied quietly. He had wanted to tell him, but their father had asked him to wait. Harry laughed bitterly, humilious. Wait for what? For this moment? For public humiliation? Charles raised a hand. He explained that history demanded clarity. The crown had to know the truth. The line of succession needed protection. Harry shouted back that these were children, 3 and 5 years old. Charles answered bluntly, they were not his. The words fell like stones into deep water. Meghan sobbed, body shaking. Archie and Lily stopped playing, staring wide-eyed at the adults. Charles announced the children's titles would be re-evaluated. They could not hold positions they were never entitled to. Harry felt his world shatter. He looked at his father, the man who had just destroyed everything he believed in, and asked why this could not have been done privately. Charles replied that he had spared Harry nothing his entire life. He would not begin now by letting lies stand as truth. Harry turned to Meghan. She reached for him, but he stepped back. He asked if it was true. She nodded, tears streaming, admitting she had tried to tell him many times. Harry said flatly she had not. The betrayal was complete, not just from Meghan, but from his father, who chose this method to reveal the truth, and from William, who had kept the secret from everyone. He looked around the room. Some family members looked away. Some watched him with pity. None moved to comfort him. He knelt beside Archie and Lily, innocent in all this, blameless in a web of secrets. He kissed their heads and stood, announcing he was leaving. Meghan began to speak, but he cut her off. His voice was cold, final. Do not say another word. He walked toward the door, legs unsteady, heart shattered into pieces too small to ever be restored. Could a family this broken ever find its way back? The secret's origin lays before Harry entered Meghan's life, in a small Los Angeles film production office, reviewing contracts for a minor role. Meghan first saw him. The room was crowded with crew and assistants, rushing to finalize paperwork before shooting began. That was when she first noticed him. Trevor, a low-budget film producer trying to make it in Hollywood, had kind eyes and an easy smile that made her feel truly seen in a city where most people passed right by her. They started talking during a lunch break, and the conversation flowed so naturally that neither of them wanted it to end. He made her laugh in ways she hadn't felt before. She made him feel like his dreams weren't foolish, like someone finally understood him in a world that often felt dismissive. Within weeks, they were inseparable. Their relationship moved quickly, fueled by youth, ambition, and that intoxicating rush of discovering someone who truly got them on a deeper level. Trevor supported her auditions, drove her to casting after casting, and believed in her talent when she barely did. Meghan fell hard. He became her cheerleader, her partner, her anchor, her safe place in a world that was often uncertain and harsh. They married young, perhaps too young, in a beautiful ceremony in Jamaica, surrounded by close friends and family who had watched their love bloom like wildfire under the Caribbean sun. The early days of their marriage were filled with laughter, late-night conversations about the future, and dreams of building something extraordinary together. Trevor wanted to produce films that made a difference. Meghan wanted to act in roles that changed the way people saw the world. They pushed each other forward, always believing that together they could conquer anything life threw at them. But Hollywood is notoriously unkind to dreamers without connections. Trevor worked long hours on projects that barely paid. Meghan auditioned endlessly, only to face rejection after rejection. Bills piled up, pressure mounted. They began to argue, first about money, then priorities, then who was sacrificing more for their dreams. Then Meghan landed a television role that required her to move to Toronto for months at a time. Trevor stayed behind in Los Angeles, trying to keep his small production company afloat. The distance slowly became a wall between them. Phone calls grew shorter, visits became rare. They were living separate lives in separate cities, bound together only by a marriage certificate and fading memories of the people they once were. The fights became harsher. Meghan accused him of not understanding the demands of her career. Trevor accused her of choosing fame over their marriage. Both were right, both were wrong. Love was still there, buried beneath the layers of resentment and exhaustion, but neither knew how to reach it anymore. Their official separation came quietly. No dramatic scenes, no public announcements, just two people admitting that they had grown apart. Divorce papers were signed. Friends were told life moved on. But something inside both of them refused to let go completely. The emotional attachment lingered like a ghost hovering just out of sight. Neither could shake it. They told themselves it was over. They told everyone else it was over. Yet neither of them truly believed it. What happens when two people divorce, but their hearts never fully separate? The unfinished love story continued quietly, hidden and unresolved. After the divorce, Meghan threw herself into work. She took on more scenes, more interviews, more appearances. She kept herself busy because being still meant thinking about what she had lost, and she wasn't ready for that yet. But late at night, when the noise of the day faded, she found herself reaching for her phone. Trevor did the same. They started with simple texts, asking how the other was doing. Then the messages became longer. Then came phone calls. Then occasional meetings for coffee. When Meghan returned to Los Angeles, they tried to stay away from each other entirely. They truly did. Trevor dated other women, trying to convince himself that he could move on. Meghan went on dates with actors and businessmen who looked good on paper but felt empty in reality. Yet every breakup, every disappointment, every lonely night pulled them back toward each other. Friends noticed the pattern and asked Meghan why she kept returning to someone she had divorced. She had no good answer. She would say they were just friends, supporting each other through difficult times. But the truth was far more complicated. The bond between them had not broken, it had only changed shape. There were moments when romance returned unexpectedly, a dinner that lasted too long, a conversation that turned too intimate, a night when old feelings resurfaced, and neither had the strength to resist. They would wake up filled with regret and confusion, promising themselves it would never happen again, but it always did. Trevor understood her in ways no one else could. He had known her before fame, before cameras, before she perfected the polished version of herself the world would see. With him, she could be messy, uncertain, raw, and real. That kind of comfort is rare, and she could not bring herself to give it up completely. Meghan knew it was unhealthy. She knew they were holding each other back from moving forward. She tried multiple times to make a clean break, blocking his number, refusing to see him, focusing entirely on building her new life. But the pull was too strong. Within weeks, she would unblock him. Within a month, they would be talking again. Trevor felt the same magnetic pull. He told himself he needed closure. He told himself that staying in contact helped them both heal. Deep down, he knew he was lying to himself. He still loved her. He probably always would. Their connection was invisible to the outside world. They were careful, meeting in private, keeping communication hidden. No one suspected that the ex-husband Meghan rarely mentioned was still woven into the fabric of her daily life. When Meghan began gaining recognition, when her career began to take off in ways they had once only dreamed about, Trevor felt proud and heartbroken at the same time. She was achieving everything they had planned together, but he was watching from the sidelines, unable to touch the life they had imagined. She felt the same strange mix of emotions. Success tasted hollow without him to share it. She wanted to call him after every milestone, every victory, every moment of doubt, and often did. Friends assumed she would eventually move on, that time, distance, and new relationships would sever the tie between them. But what no one understood was that some connections run deeper than logic, time, or even love itself. Meghan did not know how to explain it, even to herself. She had moved on in every visible way. She had built a new life, new friendships, new dreams. Yet emotionally, a part of her remained tethered to the man she had married and divorced. Trevor held on just as tightly. He waited, hoping that one day she would realize they were meant to be together. He told himself that if he was patient enough, if he stayed present enough, she would come back to him for good. Neither realized that this unfinished love story would one day collide with a life far bigger and more complicated than anything they had imagined. But could anyone truly build a new future while still holding on to the past? A prince entered the picture. Meghan met Harry on a warm summer evening in Toronto. A mutual friend had arranged the introduction, casually mentioning there was someone she simply had to meet. Meghan arrived at the restaurant, curious but not expecting anything life-changing. Then Harry walked in. He was not what she expected. No formality, no distance, no coldness, just a man with kind eyes and an easy laugh who seemed genuinely interested in her. They talked for hours, the conversation flowing as naturally as breathing. He asked about her work, her passions, her dreams. She found herself opening up in ways she rarely did with strangers. Harry felt something shift inside him. This woman was different. She was smart, independent, unafraid to challenge him. She did not treat him like a prince. She treated him like a person, a rarity in his world. It made him want to know everything about her. Their romance moved quickly. Harry flew to see her whenever possible. Meghan rearranged her schedule to spend weekends with him in London. They texted constantly, called late into the night, shared secrets, fears, and hopes. Within months, Harry knew he wanted to marry her. Meghan tried to fully close the door on her past. She told Trevor she was seeing someone serious, that they needed to stop their back and forth once and for all. Trevor agreed, though his heart broke as he said it. For a few weeks they maintained complete silence, but old habits are hard to break. When Meghan felt overwhelmed by the intensity of dating a prince, she reached out. Just a text, just a call, nothing that felt dangerous. Trevor responded every time. He told himself he was being a good friend. He told himself he was helping her through a difficult transition. But part of him hoped this new relationship would not last, that she would realize she belonged with him. Harry fell deeply and completely in love. He saw a future with Meghan that felt real and possible. He proposed within a year, offering her a ring that held stones from his mother's collection. Meghan said yes, tears streaming down her face. She meant it. She truly wanted this life with him. But the royal family was watching carefully. Charles noticed inconsistencies in the timeline. Meghan presented details about her past, but some things didn't add up. William observed unexplained trips she took without clear explanation. Palace staff reported phone calls Meghan took in private, her voice low, speaking in hushed tones, her body language tense and guarded. Kate mentioned to William that something felt off, though she couldn't pinpoint exactly what. William agreed but chose not to press the issue, wanting to preserve his brother's happiness and avoid unnecessary conflict. Harry was happier than he had been in years, glowing with love. They did not want to ruin that. Harry was too in love to notice any warning signs. When Meghan seemed distracted or distant, he assumed it was the pressure of joining the royal family. When she needed space, he gave it without question. When she kept parts of her life private, he respected her boundaries completely, trusting fully in the woman he adored. Trust came easily to him, especially with someone he loved so deeply. Meghan convinced herself that her occasional contact with Trevor was harmless. They weren't doing anything wrong. They were simply two people who had once been married and still cared about each other. She could manage both relationships, she told herself repeatedly. She could keep them separate. No one needed to know. But secrets have a way of growing in the dark. What starts as a small lie can expand into a much larger deception. What feels harmless in the moment can turn devastating. Meghan did not realize she was building a life on a foundation that could not hold. She did not see that the threads connecting her past and present were pulling tighter, knotting themselves into a rope that would eventually strangle everything she was trying to build. Harry planned their wedding with joy and hope, believing he had found a partner who would stand beside him for life. He had no idea the woman he loved was still emotionally entangled with someone else. Can a marriage survive when one person's heart is divided between two worlds, a royal wedding and a hidden storm brewing in secret? The wedding was everything the world wanted it to be. Millions watched as Meghan walked down the aisle of St. George's Chapel, her dress flowing behind her like a river of silk. Harry stood waiting, eyes brimming with love, certainty, and a pride he hadn't felt in years. They exchanged vows in front of royalty, celebrities, and commoners alike. The world celebrated the headlines, declared it a fairy tale. But behind the palace walls, concern quietly grew. Charles had received private reports from security teams who monitored communications for safety reasons. There were patterns that troubled him deeply. Phone records revealed regular contact with a number traced back to Los Angeles. Text messages were encrypted, hinting that someone wanted privacy. Meghan took calls late at night, always stepping away from Harry before answering. William learned about it first. Charles called him into his office one afternoon and laid out the information. They could not have this conversation with him present. Not yet. Charles wasted no time. He declared that the children's royal titles would be removed immediately until proper lineage could be established through legal channels. Archie and Lily could not hold positions or privileges reserved for direct descendants of the crown. The decision was final and non-negotiable. William agreed, though his voice was heavy with sadness. He understood the necessity, but hated the cruelty of it. Those children were innocent. They had done nothing wrong. Yet the monarchy had rules that existed for reasons deeper than personal feelings. Anne spoke next, her tone practical and firm. Meghan needed to be kept away from all royal events going forward. The scandal would be enormous once the truth became public, and the family could not afford to be seen as condoning or protecting her. Distance was essential. Kate sat quietly, hands folded in her lap, eyes brimming with tears. She would not let them fall. She was thinking of Harry, of the devastation he must be feeling, the life he thought he had that had just been ripped away. When the meeting paused, she asked if she could go to him. Charles nodded. She found Harry in a small room overlooking the gardens, sitting in a chair, elbows on knees, head in hands. Kate sat beside him without speaking, simply placing a hand on his shoulder. He did not move, did not cry, just sat there, breathing slowly, trying to hold himself together. Kate told him softly that the family would support him through this, that he was not alone, and that whatever he needed, they would provide. Harry nodded, but said nothing. What could he possibly say? Back in the main room, the discussion turned to protecting the monarchy's image. This revelation would shake public confidence and fuel endless speculation and criticism. The family needed a unified response, a clear message, and absolute control over the narrative. Camilla suggested releasing a carefully worded statement, acknowledging a private family matter without providing explicit details. She disagreed, arguing vagueness would invite more invasive questions. William proposed they say nothing publicly until legal matters were resolved. Charles listened to all of it and made the decision. They would remain silent for now. No statements, no explanations, no responses to press inquiries. The family would close ranks, handle matters internally, and only speak when absolutely necessary. He then addressed the question of Meghan. Strict restrictions would be placed immediately. She would not enter any royal residence without explicit permission, attend family gatherings, or be included in official photographs or events. For all practical purposes, she was no longer part of the royal family. William asked if that was legally enforceable. Charles said palace lawyers were drafting the necessary documents. Meghan would be informed of the restrictions within the hour. Anne asked about the children. Charles said Harry could decide whether to maintain a relationship despite biological truth. The family would not interfere, but they could not and would not be recognized as royals. The meeting lasted 2 hours. Everyone left feeling exhausted and hollowed out. This was not a victory, merely damage control in the wake of a disaster none of them wanted. Meghan was informed of the restrictions by palace officials, sitting in the private room, tears streaming, nodding mechanically as they explained next steps. She was not allowed to see Harry and could not leave until security protocols were in place. Harry demanded to see Meghan. Palace staff tried to delay the meeting, citing security protocols and family wishes, but he would not be stopped. He needed to hear the truth from her mouth, to look into her eyes and understand how this had happened. They met in a small private sitting room, guards stationed outside. Meghan's face was swollen from crying. Harry's expression was cold, distant, a look she had never seen. He asked one simple question: was it true? Meghan nodded, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. She tried to explain